to
He's
be
the boss of Ashes of Creation, isn't he?
I guess he is the boss of Ashes of Creation, so maybe we get to defeat Stephen Sharif at some point.
Ooh. Welcome to Disparate Worlds, where an irresistible force meets an immovable object. I'm Mox, and this is Sechari. We're comparing and contrasting the worlds of Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, and Ashes of Creation.
Yes, indeed. Hello, friends. Good to have you here. Welcome to episode 8. Now with navigation so that you can find your way around the episode.
Yeah, because believe it or not, people don't want to listen to us blather on about stupid things
Right.
like how we have new navigation.
Yes, please, dear goodness, give us a way to skip you and get straight to the point. So we have now given it to you. Feel free to find the links below if you want to start. Get right into the topic. They're there for you. The topic for this episode, well, we're on the topic. Bosses in Ashes of Creation. Namely, how do we feel about instancing, open world, how all of that affects things, and all of the complications appertaining thereunto.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Stephen Sharif.
Are you? It depends if you're considering him a boss. That to
He's
be
the boss of Ashes of Creation, isn't he?
I guess he is the boss of Ashes of Creation. So maybe we get to defeat Stephen Sharif at some point.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
I know that sounds very entertaining for you as a Pantheon person, you know, kind of competing against the Ashes thing. So, who knows, you get to take on the boss. Sooner or later, we will. I'd love to have him in here for an interview, so maybe you do get to take on the boss. I think that'd be a great episode. We'll see. We'll see if we can make that happen. The only thing that is in the news is, and at least at the time of this recording, an upcoming developer live stream for Ashes of Creation. That will be on December the 22nd at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But who knows? By the time we release this episode, that may be in the future, may be in the past. So, I mean, it could be, you know, we could release this episode right during that. So who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. So that's the news. Let's go ahead and get into our topic. Okay, so let us get into the topic for this episode. I'm going to allow Mox to intro this one because this one is one that he brought up for discussion. I think it's worth considering. So,
yeah,
over to you, Mox.
All right, so there was a topic on Reddit this week about how Ashes of Creation is going to handle world bosses and raid bosses in general, I guess, and the discussion of the kind of the percentage that's going to be open world versus instance and such, and that's really is what has kind of triggered this. But really, what we want to talk about is why instancing exists, like what are the benefits of it, and then what are the challenges to not instancing,
right?
And then just kind of how Ashes is planning on kind of handling the whole barrel of monkeys, so to speak.
Barrel of monkeys, very interesting.
Yeah.
I guess it is a barrel of monkeys. Who knows? Yeah, no kidding. Definitely. There's a lot to this. I tell you what, Mox, let's go ahead and get into some of the benefits of instancing. I think it's worth talking about why MMOs use instancing as an approach for managing boss encounter content.
Right.
And I think it's worth having that in mind as we then proceed onto what Ashes is going to do, instancing or no instancing, and what some of those challenges or benefits may be with their approach with that in mind. So that's why we're going to kind of start with this. Bring one up, Mox. What would be the first thing that you would, I guess, suggest as a benefit of instanced content?
I think the first thing we need to talk about is that, and this isn't in our notes, but I think the things that we talk about here are not necessarily limited to a PvP-centric game, because some of the things that we're going to talk about, some of the things that we're going to talk about, we have encountered in other games where you aren't flagged for PvP, and you still encounter some of these issues.
Okay.
So they're not exclusive to. It's not all going to be, oh, I'm forced to PvP. So just know that up front. So the first one though is no outside interference, and that can come in the form of PvP. It also can come in the form of a group coming along and trying to steal your mob from you.
Yes.
So you've got multiple ways that interference can occur.
Yes, so the benefit, as we would say, to having an instance, right, if you have a boss in an instance, is that there's no outside interference, whatever that interference might, however it might look, right? I mean, It is a very controlled encounter where the only thing in that instance is what they have decided is going to be in that instance. If it's stages or however it works, but there isn't any PvP or open world or PvP disturbance from somewhere else.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you're not going to have people come in training mobs on you. You're not going to get somebody come in to gank you right as you're low health because you've been fighting this guy. There may not be some patrol, that's just happening through the area of a couple, 3 guards, and then they see you and now, you aggroed them. And so now that you're having to take them on, almost like ads that show up during a boss fight, no outside interference. So absolutely, very good.
Exactly.
Volunteer a second one.
Okay. You could have multiple groups going through the same encounter at the same time if you instance. You're not limited to just that one boss being out in the world on the server.
Right.
So you go through the veil of the instance, and you are in there, and your dragon is in front of you. Your rival guild goes through the veil at the same time, and they get their own version of that dragon to kill.
Right, so multiple people can do this thing at the same time, and that's great. Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely. Probably, in my opinion, probably the chief reason for instancing would be to allow multiple people, to be able to encounter the same content at the same time. Tell me about save progress, because this is one that you brought up as well when we were building this list.
So if you have a raid that has multiple bosses, and your group is let's say you're just learning this, and so on night 1 you go in and you beat your head against the first boss, and at the end of the night you make that final push and you kill him or her or it, and but it's the end of the night. Your people have to go to work the next day. They have to go to school, whatever the case is. Everybody has to log off, and your progress can get saved in an instance. So the next night or 2 nights later, as long as it's before the server resets, your group can go back in and pick up with boss number 2.
Right.
So saving your progress, and even sometimes if you kill up to the boss 1, the ads may not respawn. Like the stuff you had to clear, the junk to get to that boss may not respawn. World of Warcraft had a thing where you had some rock elementals, some earth elementals, you had fire elementals, you had these fire-breathing dogs in this raid, and once you killed the fire-breathing dog boss, the fire-breathing dogs didn't spawn anymore. And once you killed the rock elemental boss, the rock elementals that wandered around didn't respawn. So your progress got easier when you came back, because there's less and less stuff to deal with.
Yes, absolutely.
So
not everyone does that.
Right, and that's good though. So things like that that can help you and make it easier the next time you go in. Again, a benefit. I'm not saying it's the best way to do something, but it's a benefit of having an instance.
Yes, you essentially you pick up where you left off. Right, you can resume the next night and not have to go back and do all of that work again. Yeah, for sure. So that touches on another one that I'll throw out here, and that is lockouts and economic impact. In recent MMOs we've played, and I think Star Wars: The Old Republic is a good example of this. Let's say there were 5 bosses in this one raid, and you finished that one all the way to the end. You were done. You could not fight any one of those bosses. As long as there was another boss still to do, you had that save progress that we were just talking about. But if you finished the raid, you were locked out for the week, and server reset had to happen in order for all of those things to respawn. And then at that point, you had So it's interesting because they always did their server resets on a Tuesday morning. If you got in there on a Monday night and cleared the thing out, Tuesday night you could get back in there and do it. It was back-to-back days, but you could only do it once in the week. So you had to wait all the way to the 1 week. And I think that's there's positive and negative to that, but I think one of the positives to using lockouts is the economic impact, because these bosses are all dropping things, and if you can come back repeatedly, and once you get good at this content, especially, farm it essentially, right? And then that's why we talk about, use that as a word. You can have this windfall that you're then able to turn around and put on the market, and so there's an economic impact to being able to farm bosses, and that's the ability to sell stuff. Well, that creates some inflation in the economy. So, to control some of that, I think is good in at least is one of the benefits of lockouts. So, all right. So those are the benefits of instancing. Clearly, there is a reason that with certain game design, the game designer teams felt that using the instancing as an approach had more benefit than not using instancing, or else they would not have done it. Okay.
Right.
So, Mox, let's take a second to talk about some of the challenges that are presented by doing things open world instead of instancing. Okay, so along those lines, my friend, tell me, we had just mentioned about no outside interference. If you're going to be doing this in an open world, what types of outside interference might you expect to come along?
Well, in a PvP-centered game, the number one thing would be like just PvP. Your rival guild comes in and or rival node, I guess, in Ashes, swoops in, and they don't want you killing that boss. Like they want to prevent that from occurring, so they're going to try to fight you guys while you are in the midst of this battle. They may start off like get you before you go. They may wait until you engage it, and then you're dealing with trying to keep your tank alive, and they're fighting you. So you have the potential for PvP during a raid encounter, which just to me sounds like just a mess, like something I definitely do not want to have to deal with.
Especially large group on large group. I've seen somebody out in the wild fighting somebody, and you're waiting to gank them, and when they are done with that encounter and they're real low in life, that's when you hit them.
Right.
And it's like an easy kill. So, and that's just on the one-on-one kind of encounters out there in a PvP-centric world. I've seen horrible things like you're doing it, and suddenly in comes an army of raptors that are following some idiot who ran around and collected them. He aggroed them all, and then like he Daffy Ducks his way in there and brings them all with him.
Daffy Ducks right into the middle of all of your ground effects, so they are then tagged by that ground effect.
Yes, because you're dropping that AoE.
Die. He's probably counting on dying, but he's also counting on those mobs then turning on you, like once he's dead.
Yes, and then you're having to face all of that as well as this boss. And a lot of times that can turn out to be a group wipe when you're doing that. So, and I've seen that happen in games. So definitely some terrible outside interference that way. What about tagging?
So, tagging is a tough one because it determines who gets loot. In most games, if you tag a mob, if your group tags a mob, then you generally get looting rights, which is not necessarily the way that Ashes is going to handle that, and we'll discuss that a little bit later about kind of how they're handling it and what our concerns are with their tagging system. But what happens if somebody sneaks in and tags it, but your group doesn't realize it? Like they got that shot in before you did, and your group of 40 people kills the mob.
Right, but they had the tag.
And they got the tag.
Then they get the loot, right?
They get the loot.
And you've
done
all
the
the work.
downside to just that type of tagging system is that, you're like, they got the tag, so they won, in quotes, the rights to the loot, even though you guys did all the work. So, in a way, the Ashes system actually fixes that one single potential problem, how they're handling tagging. So again, we're going to talk about tagging in a couple minutes, but that's that's just a challenge that has to be overcome when you're dealing with not in an instance. If you're in an instance, you never have to worry about it because everybody in there is part of your raid.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, and the outside interference for sure. What about spawn timers? Let me bring this one up.
Camping spawn timers is the absolute one of the.
Right.
It's one of the things like it's great for socializing in an MMO. So it's really good for
standing
that part,
around. What a surprise!
You get to like talk, you get to know people and things of that nature. And I do have fond memories of camping a spawn in EverQuest, but there comes a point at which it becomes a bit of a hassle that you are like, okay, it's time to go to work now. And I've been up all night camping the spawn, so now I have to go to work tired. Not fun. So, that's an issue. And if 2 or 3 groups are camping the spawn, it happens, then you have to be the first group to get there.
Yes.
So mobilization then becomes part of the spawn timer. And again, in a game like Ashes, where there's not a lot of quick travel involved, how are you going to get your people there?
Mobilizing groups for sure, and then getting everyone there on time, and then being able to hit it before someone else does. Spawn timers becomes an issue, definitely in open world. Obviously, these are all like the other side of the coin of one of the benefits of instancing. So we had spoken for a moment ago about no safe progress. That you don't get, when you are instancing, but you do get when you are instancing. You can go in there and pick up at boss 3. If it's open world, no, that stuff is all going to respawn. You have to go back in there and clear it all out.
Even if it doesn't respawn, another group could come through in the time in between when your group logs off and you log back on, and they could kill it.
Yes.
So even if there is because they said something about you have to progress through some tier of kills to get to some of these raid bosses, or these world bosses. So we don't know how is that actually going to manifest itself. Like, will the acolyte be out, and then the chief, and then the next big boss, and then the final big boss? Will the chief be sitting out there if you killed the first guys?
Yeah.
And just be sitting out there waiting for another group to come through and kill him?
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Yeah, and that's halfway is interference from other sources, of course.
Right. Exactly.
But definitely, you as a team don't get the safe progress. You may have to come back and start all over, or somebody else you may be a couple steps behind someone else, and they've managed to kill to boss 3, and then they're out, and then you have just
you reap the rewards.
4 or 5, right? You have to go in and clean up after them. So I don't know. It gets a little bit messy to me. And then, of course, inflation, right? We'd spoken about how lockouts can control, based on how many attempts have been made, really, the economic impact of some of the loot hitting the market. If it's open world, I don't know. And I think partially this depends on the spawn timer. If there's a longer spawn timer, that's a way to kind of control that. But if you just have it spawning pretty quick, then welcome to inflation. People are going to get those materials, and onto the market they will go.
And they will be rich and you will be poor because you have to spend a lot of money for it.
They are farming. It is a thing. So, all right, let us go ahead and get into the way that we're seeing Ashes of Creation implement this stuff, and a little bit of commentary. Okay, Mox, let me throw you the ball on this one. You had brought up an instance where you had spoken about an 80-20 split. Can you explain to me what that 80-20 split is, and how that works?
Okay, so back in 2017, Steven Sharif was asked about how instancing would happen with dungeons and raids and things of that nature, and that you'll have to have like a certain amount of people in order to defeat something, at least initially, till people get geared up. Will you need like a 20-person group, a 10-person group, a 40-person group? Who knows? So he's asked that, and the answer that came out was basically that there's going to be both. There's going to be instance dungeons and raids and content, but some of it isn't exactly going to be a true instance in that you're the only one that's going to be in there. It was mentioned that there's going to be several instance access points inside of a dungeon to get to a boss. So we're interpreting this to mean that you fight your way through a dungeon that is open world, and you get to a point at which there is a cavern or an arena or something at the end of this dungeon that has several doors that you can go through, and your group goes through, and another group can also go through another door.
Okay.
So your instance, but it's not a private instance.
Yes.
So it's like a Pseudo-Instance is what we're calling it.
Like we had pseudo caravan, pseudo PvP instances, I guess. Like
right.
It's showed up again this episode.
Right.
Yeah. So it's an open. It's not an instance. Okay. To be completely technically correct, there is no instancing happening here. But you put an entry into this arena of some kind. Let's say it's a cave that you're going down. There's multiple cave entrances, and whoever you can get into one of those, but there's something there to gate your access. So if they want you to go in there in a group of 10, there's some boss or something there gating this entrance or that entrance, or maybe multiple ones. Either way, you have to do a DPS check maybe, right, to see how much damage you can put out. If you're putting out enough damage, chances are you've got a group large enough to be able to go down here and continue with the rest of it. So although it is an open world thing, they gate. A party of 5 would not be able to put out the DPS. They would get killed by whatever check or whatever challenge there is at the entrance of this. But if you manage to make it through, then onward you go. The only problem with that then is that it's open world. So even though they've to try to leverage some of the benefits of instancing while still doing open world, it is still open world. So group 2 may be able to come through, their challenge, and now suddenly here you guys are looking at each other going, well, who finishes this thing? Do we team up?
Right.
Do we kill each other? What are our options suddenly? Were we here first? Well, this is going to get complicated.
And have you already started that boss fight that's inside there? If you did, and all of a sudden group 2 comes in, now are they going to try and kill you, or are they going to try and obviously you're not going to stop your fight just because group 2's here, so they're obviously going to then engage you.
Yes, and there's going to be some etiquette, right? Like if you're number 2.
No, this is not a nice world, Sechari.
I know it's not supposed to be.
This is a PvP world. There is no etiquette. There's kill or be killed.
This is true.
You are the lamb, I am the lion.
This is true. So, but I still think it's going to be an expectation, right? Like we as players are going to say, hey, ting, ting, ting. Hey, you guys hold on. I'm busy here. Ting, 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 ting. I'm fighting this boss. Hoping that these guys are not going to jump in and kill us, right? Now, obviously, then if they may end up corrupted, I mean, there's the whole corruption mechanic.
Right.
And maybe they don't want to be corrupted, and so that's enough to stave them off. But that group 2 is going to be bothered by the fact that, great, we just got here. These guys just started this fight. Now we have to wait for the respawn timer. And all the way throughout the rest of this thing, they're going to be 2 steps ahead of us, killing what we're trying to get to. We just killed the one before, then we get to this one, and now we got to wait for them to kill that too, and then we got to wait for the respawn timer all the way through this thing.
Right.
So that could be complicated. That is, if they're nice enough,
right,
to not get corrupted.
Right.
That's gonna be.
And then the other thing they could do though is try to steal the kill from you, depending on how far along you are into that fight. So let's say you're only 5% away in the fight, and they think they can out DPS you to the tune of 60% to your remaining 35%.
Yes.
To get the loot.
Okay, so let's talk for a second about this. I think we need to define this. I'm not sure who all has been sniffing through the wiki the way we have, but the way that the looting rights happen, there's 2 things. One is the tag, and the other one is the DPS output, and there has to be a combination of both in order for you to win the loot rights to that boss, right?
Right.
So if you're the first one who hits it, you get the tag, which has a benefit to that, and that's that you and your group at least, have to have put 40% of the damage into this thing. If you can get over that 40%...
Let's call it 41%. Or 40.1%.
Yes.
Because it has to be over 40.
You have to clear that hurdle. Even if it's ever so slightly, you have to get that 40% hurdle, which is nicer than a 50% hurdle, right? That tag gives you a 10% off.
Discount.
Yeah, the discount. But you still have to make that hurdle. Now, someone else can come in, and if you've just hit that tag, they can just start fighting it as well. And if they can outdo you to the tune of 60% of the damage. Now, that's not harder to do in a bigger group. If they have a bigger group, they might as well go for it.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
But even though they don't have the tag, they can win the looting rights if they manage to do 60% of the damage.
How does area of effect damage work in this situation? Like, are you area, if you're throwing out an area effect spell, it's gonna hit the mob and all of the...
No, so I was worried about that previously and was doing some research on that for a former episode, and the way apparently unintended AoE does not affect non-flagged for PvP people that may be caught in it. So if they're not flagged but if they are flagged for PvP, it's going to hit them.
Right. So this is Ashes. Who's not going to be... Well, I guess there are going to be people that are flagged, but this actually brings up a funny story, and this is a potential concern. In World of Warcraft, when I was leveling on my PvP server, we would go and do raids that were instance, but you would have... there'd be PvP happening outside of the instance zone. So you'd have, like, your people had to fight through to get through. And it was such a pain in the neck. Then you had people inside your raid, some of who were flagged, some of who weren't. If you were flagged for PvP, a person who wasn't flagged for PvP healed you, they got flagged.
Yes.
And then it just was a nightmare. We called it spreading the plague. So eventually what we ended up doing is, like, when everybody got inside, everybody flagged for PvP. And then you just let the flag drop off because, like, so the whole flagging for PvP thing is a whole separate thing that you have to overcome when you talk about instancing.
And you're going to have to make sure to go in without that flag. But I mean,
or you either all go in with it or you all go in without it. It's one or the other. You can't have a mix because it just causes issues.
There's a semi-tab select, right? I mean, like if you tab the wrong thing and select somebody that you're not supposed to,
right,
and hit them, then you get corrupted. Now you're in the fight. Now you're flagged for PvP, right? I mean, there's a lot of. It's okay when you're PvPing. When you're trying to kill a boss, these are things you don't want to worry about. So I think it's very, very complicated mechanics.
Exactly. So this doesn't even bring up the fact that what if there are 3 doors? So you have 3 groups now competing for this mob. What if nobody gets to 40%?
I know.
Then what, Steven? Please comment down below, Steven Sharif, and tell us what will happen if nobody gets to 40%.
Help us, Steven. We are praying to you. We need answers. Why won't you answer us? That's one thing that hasn't been mentioned. Now, chances are... Okay, look, I really honestly think it's going to be a very edge case kind of thing. How often are you going to get 3 groups that decide to descend on... it's less likely... You still have to account for it. Maybe 4 groups, who knows? But I still think 3 groups, there is an odd chance of that happening. Probably need to say, okay, if there are 3 people that are out doing DPS, obviously give more to don't cut it right, 33%, maybe make it 20% for the tagged group or something, and everyone else has to absorb that difference.
Right. I agree that in a dungeon scenario, you're unlikely to come out with more than 2 that are going for it. But if you're talking about an open world situation, like where you've got this,
like a world boss,
you can easily have 3 or more groups competing for it.
Well, okay, so I'm drawing on my experience having played other MMOs and being out there finding and killing world bosses. I have seen, especially during an event of some kind, if there's a boss that's out there because of an event, that's where I've seen it happen, where you get a couple of teams that show up. But to my knowledge, I've never seen 3 groups. Not saying it could not happen, but I think if this boss is always out there, probably less likely because people will be able to go find it and kill it and move on with their lives. But here's another aspect of this, is that this is all directly tied to the node system, world bosses and such, right? So if a tier 5 becomes a tier 6 node, now suddenly that world boss is out there, now suddenly you have some demand on that boss, there's going to be a higher likelihood on the outset when you unlock that boss that now people are going to want to go get it and they're going to make attempts at it. You probably will see 3 teams, 4 teams showing up to fight this thing.
Okay, speaking from experience in games where world bosses mattered for quest drops and things of that nature, you will have guilds that will have scouts out at where these things spawn. When they because people will eventually know
dropping
what these
a note
spawn
in Discord
timers are. Right, exactly. The call will go out on Discord, people will log in and they'll go. And there will be multiple groups that will be putting that same call out.
Especially the spawn timers. If the spawn timers are long, that exacerbates this problem, right? It makes it worse. That's what that means, by the way.
Now,
you know,
people that are part of that node are going to have an advantage because they're going to be closer to it. But people could also log out nearby. Hey, we know on Wednesday night that this dragon is going to spawn. So when you log out on Tuesday night, log out here. So we're all together and ready to go so that we can pounce on that when it spawns. So travel time may or may not come into this. It can, but it may be a non-issue if people start to know what these timers are. If the timers are more random, that helps with things like that.
Yes.
I
still think you're right. There will be scouts. Somebody will be like, okay, look, I'm on the game. I'm going to be chopping wood. I'm just going to chop wood in this area, right? And I'll just gather and I'll wait. I'll let y'all know. Hey, by the way, Discord, it's up. Word goes out, everybody logs in, they try to take it on. But there may be another scout waiting, doing the exact same thing, and I think it's worse when there's less of a spawn timer. When it's only once per week or once per month or whatever, you're going to get 8 teams that show up if it's only few and far between that we ever see this thing. So
exactly,
spawn timers is a tricky situation, and I think it's made worse. It's harder. It becomes more of a challenge for the developing team when you are dealing with an open world situation. As much as Ashes is trying to be as open world as possible, it's going to be a complicated dance with those spawn timers for sure.
Absolutely. One thing that I found that in my experience with MMOs that has combated a lot of these issues we brought up with is how Guild Wars 2 handles loot and world bosses. Now, granted, their world bosses are a totally different animal than what we're dealing with in games like EverQuest and what I assume Ashes is going to do. In that their world bosses spawn much more frequently, multiple times a day frequency.
And it's a world event. It's not so much a world boss as an open world event that shows up, and you can come show up and be in the event if you want to.
Right. And you don't have to group up. You just show up and you start shooting the boss, and based on your participation, based on what you can do, so the game knows you're level X and you could do this much damage. If you do that much damage, you get the gold tier loot. And
if you join the fight late compared to when you joined it earlier, yes, there's a tier. You're gold or silver or bronze based on your level of participation.
Right.
Whatever that means. I think maybe it's for, for there's a certain time component. You've been in the whole fight, or you've been in here for half the fight, and your damage output, and maybe I don't have to think about time so much as your damage output, right, or whatever you've done, healing people or whatever you can do to be a part of it.
Exactly.
But you don't have to be a member of the group, and you just have to show up and be a part of it.
Right. So they have these world boss trains that go around and slaughter all the world bosses because they basically, because they spawn in on timers. Once boss 1 comes up and gets killed, you move to boss 2, and then 6 or 8 or 10 hours later, the same train goes through, killing the same bosses. Yeah. Now that's for Guild Wars 2. Very much a kumbaya, group hug, let's all get along kind of game. Right. It is not what Ashes Creation can do. So I don't think that type of situation could work in Ashes, but it is a unique mechanic, and I do like the way they deal with it, and it would be nice if there was things like that, like maybe for event bosses that it was participation based as opposed to competition based.
Right. And so maybe they don't want that to happen. We were debating a little bit before this episode is, what happens if they do want it to suck? They want these things. They want people to show up and hold on a moment. We want that boss, and it gets complicated, and you then have to PvP your way to fight that boss, and then somebody tags the boss while you're doing the PvP kind of a thing. Let it be a mess. It just makes completing that encounter harder. And maybe they're okay with that.
I just wanted to go on record that Sechari did say that the game is going to suck, and that it's going to be more difficult. So just
more difficult, yes. We want more difficult for sure. Yes, you can try, my friend, to make me say awful things about my beloved Ashes of Creation, but I will not.
All in all, I think that Ashes has some things that we're going to find out about the how the world bosses are handled. I think that I don't think we actually mentioned that the 80-20 split. I do want to mention that before we do wrap up, that the 80-20 split is going to be between open world content or the pseudo type of instance, and the 20% is going to be stuff that is strictly related to a narrative, a story of some sort that is going to be instanced. I think that's going to be a pure instance where you can go in and deal with it without any
on
type
your
of
own
interference,
kind of a thing. Yeah, where
Exactly,
in
on
order
your
to get the
own,
quest line done, you don't have to wait there for, you know, especially, I mean, event type of stuff. That's annoying if you're stuck and you can't get through it and someone else keeps getting the credit. And then the event ends and you just didn't do it. Then you've got this quest in your quest log that you got to wait, you know, for the next time the event shows up. It's messy. I've had that happen before too, so it's annoying.
So that we got that information from an Asmongold interview, which we will also link in the description.
For sure. All right, guys, our promotion for this episode, all we wanted to do was let you know that the website has been relaunched. There's a lot more colors in this one.
Relaunched? Didn't we just launch like 3 months ago?
Yes, we did. So,
and you got a burr in your saddle?
Do you really want to care about the story?
I do.
I'll make it quick. So, yeah, we had a WordPress theme that we were using with the last one that was a little bit clunky. It was hard to manage. I was having lots of problems with it, so I fired it and we got one that I like, and it's this one is actually performing really well. Like, I'm impressed with all of the cool things we can do. I've got a lot of cool things planned, so do tune into our website for sure. DisparateWorlds.org, definitely worth checking out. Mox has a series, a Tenet's Pantheon thing.
I know,
you guys are Ashes guys.
I owe an episode on that.
So anyway, that's out there. If you care to go drop by, definitely check out our website.
So this week's Comquest, tell us your war stories. Have you had a boss stolen from your group? Or have you viciously swooped in and stolen a boss from some unsuspecting guild? If you did, we want to hear about it. The most entertaining answer will definitely get pinned and be the Comquerer.
Yes.
Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/DisparateWorlds. We are on Twitter at Disparate Worlds, and our website, as Sechari mentioned, is disparateworlds.org. In addition, we have an awesome Discord server. There's a link in the description below and on our brand spanking new website. Please check it out and join us there.
Yes, indeed. All right, that'll be it for us this episode. Definitely thank you for watching. Always a pleasure to have you here. Hopefully you were able to navigate the episode better than previous times. That's for free. Do drop a comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you do not miss upcoming episodes. With all of that said, take care of yourselves. Have a good one. Remember always to be immovable in your principles and irresistible in your passion.